What if one of Pokemon's creepiest legends wasn't something fans made up out of thin air, but was hiding inside the official game itself? In Pokémon FireRed, the Pokédex doesn't sugarcoat it. It flat out says that Hypno once hypnotized a child and led them away. That single line became the spark for one of the darkest fan stories the series has ever inspired. Fans took that unsettling detail and transformed it into a lullaby that spread across forums and YouTube readings. In this video, we'll trace its origin, break down its verses, and explore why a few lines of text reshaped how players saw Hypno. Because Pokemon always looked safe on the surface, but one hidden entry planted a seed of unease that's impossible to ignore once you've seen it. Everyone remembers Pokemon as a bright, cheerful world filled with friendly creatures and safe adventures. But tucked inside those Pokédex entries we often skim past, certain lines hinted at something darker. Most players didn't notice as kids, but revisiting them now, one in particular feels far more unsettling, and it belongs to Hypno. Visually, Hypno was already out of step with the rest. You think of Pikachu, it's kind of round and inviting. Hypno, on the other hand, well, it looked thin, human-like, and always carried that pendulum. His concept seemed simple enough, a psychic Pokemon that puts opponents to sleep. No scarier than a Snorlax dozing in the road, at least at first glance. But the details in his Pokédex entries told a different story. Most Pokemon are described like animals in a field guide. Lapras ferries people across the sea, Arbok's pattern frightens enemies. These feel like biology lessons wrapped in fantasy. Hypno's FireRed entry, though, went much further. It describes him as carrying a pendulum-like device and explains there was once an incident in which it took away a child it had hypnotized. Read slowly, that isn't playful trivia. It sits uncomfortably close to something you'd expect in a police report. That contrast is what makes him so strange. Gengar and Haunter pull spooky tricks, but it's framed as mischief. Sharpedo and Tyranitar are dangerous predators, but they're still treated like wild animals. Hypno's description makes him a direct threat to people themselves. Worse, the victim isn't just a trainer, but specifically a child. That one detail collapses the safe divide the series usually maintains between humans and Pokemon. The anime gave us more to think about too. In the early episode Hypno's Nap Time, we see children fall into trance-like states, wandering away as if they've become Pokemon themselves. At the time, most kids watching the show probably let the plot slide by as just another one-off adventure. But when paired with this official Pokédex entry, the episode feels strangely consistent, almost like the games and the show were reinforcing the same idea. Some fans have even noticed parallels to a later FireRed and Leaf Green side story involving a missing girl named Lostelle. While it neatly echoes Hypno's disturbing lore, most researchers agree this connection is speculative at best. Still, the fact that players even drew the link shows how much Hypno's reputation lingered long after those first line of text. As children, we might have treated these darker notes as harmless background flavour. Looking back, they read more like fragments of a horror story hiding inside the game. And that one official sentence in black and white text was all it took to spark unease. Now, the unsettling part is what came next. Years later, fans would take that single disturbing detail and spin it into something that spread far beyond the games themselves. Around 2010, something unusual began showing up in Pokemon fan forums, a short, haunting poem written like a lullaby. It wasn't packaged as a creepypasta or backed by a well-known writer, just a few eerie verses copied and pasted between threads. That simplicity gave it momentum. Within months, an early narrated upload on YouTube carried it far beyond forums, and by November of that year, the version read by trainer Derek drew major attention. To be clear, he didn't claim authorship. He has said that he adapted what he had found into song form. But his reading, paired with Lavender Town's creepy theme, was one of the sparks that pushed the lullaby into the larger Pokemon fandom. The poem went as follows. Come, little children, come with me. Safe and happy you will be. Away from your home, now let us run. With Hypno, you'll have so much fun. Oh, little children, please don't cry. Hypno wouldn't hurt a fly. Be free, be free, be free to play. Come down in my cave with me to stay. Oh little children, please don't squirm. Those ropes I know will hold you firm. Hypno tells you this is true, but sadly, Hypno lied to you. Oh little children, you mustn't leave. Your families for you will grieve. Their minds will unravel at the seams, allowing me to haunt their dreams. But surely all of you must know that it is time for you to go. Oh little children, you weren't clever, now you shall stay with me forever. The mystery only deepened when no original author could be traced. Because nobody knew who wrote it, fans didn't read it like normal fanfiction. Instead, it felt older than that, more like folklore that had always been hiding online. Slight variations in the lyrics began circulating too, with some lines swapped or rearranged depending on the forum or video. That sense of namelessness and fluidity gave it a weight that polished fan stories usually don't have. It was less a post and more a warning whispered around the community. The poem began disarmingly soft. One of its most quoted opening lines invites, "Come little children, come with me." On the surface, this feels gentle, even safe. Exactly like the lullabies parents used to calm their kids. But in the context of Hypno's Pokédex entry, that warmth immediately reads differently. The line promises safety, but it also positions Hypno as the voice of comfort, the one children should follow. That false trust is the hook, and for many readers, it was the first subtle shift from charm into threat. As the verses continue, the tone grows darker without breaking its sing-song rhythm. Later lines read, "Now look to me, the pendant calls. Back and forth your eyelids fall." Here, the cadence mirrors hypnosis. The rhythm is steady, repetitive, just like a pendulum swing. With each repeated sound, it reinforces the sense of surrender. What seemed like a lullaby slips into a description of capture, where rest means losing control. The bait and switch is exactly why the poem lingered. If it had started with violent imagery, readers might have brushed it off as another edgy fan creation. By beginning with comfort and gradually tightening its grip, it echoed the way childhood songs could flip in meaning when heard in a darker context. Fans described feeling unsettled without always knowing why, as though the words slipped under their guard. When paired with softly delivered YouTube narrations, the unease only deepened. The voices often spoke in first person, as if Hypno himself was singing, and the contrast between gentle tone and sinister intent struck hard. The end result was that Hypno's lullaby stuck in people's heads. Its namelessness meant that no one could fact check it or dismiss it easily. This was because it spread without a name attached to it. It read more like an unearthed legend than a new fan creation. What began as a quiet verse on a forum became one of the most enduring myths tied to Pokémon, and soon fans would start comparing it to the other unsettling stories that they grew up hearing. Unlike most other Pokémon creepypasta, Hypno's lullaby wasn't imagined out of glitches or near mythical ROM hacks. It grew directly from a sentence buried in the FireRed Pokédex. Lavender Town Syndrome played on unsettling audio. Lost Silver imagined a corrupted save file, and Buried Alive painted a hidden boss in a Pokemon tower. Those legends were pure invention. Hypno's lullaby, by contrast, pulled its horror from something already written into the game. That official detail is what gave the poem striking credibility. And when fans first encountered it, the difference was obvious. The Pokédex had already said Hypno once led a child away. Hearing a lullaby that invited children to follow only seemed like a continuation of that eerie fact. That overlap between canon and fan creation blurred the line, making the verses feel less like storytelling and more like something the game developers implied but never showed. The poem's power also lies in its restraint. Many creepypastas dive into gore or shocking imagery. The lullaby doesn't. It stays calm, rhythmic, and childlike, which only makes its implications worse. It takes the trust built into a soothing song and twists it into manipulation. One moment it feels safe, The next, it quietly asks the listener to leave their family behind and walk away with Hypno. That single image of a child disappearing without resistance, it lingers more than any graphic detail ever could, because it never closes the story off. The silence around what happens next leaves space for imagination. We don't know where the children go, we don't know if they're ever found. The unanswered gaps are what make it so unsettling. It becomes less about what's written and more about what your mind supplies to finish the picture. That emotional hook made Hypno's Lullaby spread well beyond the forums where it first appeared. Fans began recording readings paired with ominous ambient music, some of which have gathered hundreds of thousands of views. Others turned the verses into full songs, videos, and animations. In time, it was even remixed into community projects like rhythm game mods, including a Friday night funking version that showed how adaptable the story became. None of these were official, but they demonstrate how one short poem transformed into an enduring fan-made phenomenon. For longtime Pokemon players, the Lullaby carried a second sting. Nostalgia turned on its head. Games that once symbolized safety and routine suddenly held shadows they hadn't seen as children. Returning to them with this new context meant the old comfort was layered with unease, and unlike Lavender Town, which relied on atmosphere, or Lost Silver, which relied on narrative collapse, Hypno's Lullaby turned the foundation of trust against itself. That betrayal is what continues to resonate. So here's a quick question to you. Which official Pokédex entry creeped you out the most when you were a kid? Drop it in the comments, I'd love to see which odd details stuck with you. Hypno's Lullaby is the perfect example of how a cheerful game world can hide an unnerving detail that changes everything. One Pokédex line about a missing child becomes a poem, and that poem reshaped how fans look at Pokemon itself. Over a decade later, it remains a steady part of the fandom's conversations, proving how small moments can echo far beyond their original context. Now, Hypno's Lullaby isn't the only time Pokemon crossed into nightmare fuel. There was another story buried in the code of the original game, something much darker. If you thought Hypno was disturbing, wait until you meet the Buried Alive model at the top of Pokemon Tower. Click here to watch that next, if you dare.